This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live Refreshing Technology is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, tablet, Xbox, games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store. Remember, current students, faculty, parents, and active military can save up to 10% off almost everything. To browse the products and learn more about the discounts, you can go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. One of the stories we missed last week, while we were dealing with hurricane stuff down here, was about the right to repair laws, and in particular, that a longtime opponent wrote a letter to the state of California in support of their right to repair laws that are coming. That company was Apple. Big surprise. They have long fought it. They've added extra technology to their computers and their phones. I have been through it. I have a piece also that I've been working on about my experience dealing with Apple's anti-repair technology. And then they just said, no, we're in favor. Everything's good. Now, I think Apple was trying to avoid, in the US, in particular in California, what has happened to them in the EU, where the EU is actively seemingly going after them with things like the USB-C requirements coming up on phones and devices like that. But this week, we have somebody sliding in to fill their space as an opponent of right to repair laws. And I honestly, if I had been given 100 guesses, or a million years, as these guys like to calculate time, I wouldn't have guessed that our newest opponent of right to repair laws is Scientology. Now, it's not Scientology directly. This is an organization that is known for separation of concerns. They definitely have subsidiaries of subsidiaries of subsidiaries, and that's 100% what we've got going on here. Somebody from Author Services, Inc., which is a subsidiary of Church of Spiritual Technology, which is a subsidiary of Scientology, like layers of layers, sent a letter to the U.S. Copyright Office looking for a new exemption. Follow this sentence, I know. A new exemption from the exemptions of the DMCA. Now, the DMCA says a lot of things, but part of it says that you cannot circumvent protective technology to violate trademark or copyright. Or patent, I think. And so that is what Scientology is taking issue with, because there are exceptions to those rules, particularly for things like regular consumer electronics and things like that, where there may be consequences. For example, you're allowed to take apart and make changes to your Xbox, but if you do that, you're not going to have access to Xbox Live anymore. You're allowed to make the changes, but you can't go online afterwards and play games. So there's a carve-out for that. Now, Scientology wants a carve-out in the carve-out that allows for the protection of technologies that require special training or special licensing to use. Now, why? Well, they didn't say, but we can make some pretty intelligent guesses here. The organization makes one and only one device. They call it generally an e-meter. And you hold things and they ask you questions and only they can see your response off the meter. And it's an old-fashioned lie detector. That's it. It's an old-fashioned lie detector. There's nothing terribly special about it, except for the fact that it's special because it's theirs. They have several generations. You can even buy them online. But what they're trying to do, most likely, is protect the fact that it's just a old-fashioned lie detector. Not a modern one, an old-fashioned one. Designed sometime in the 50s or 60s, I think. And it's changed zero since then. They are almost certainly trying to protect that. But, I don't know. They're a litigious organization. I expect to get a letter for this episode. And for the article that I wrote. But I don't know. It's a little weird to me. I know they're very protective of their stuff. Their people, their, aliens and volcanoes and hydrogen bombs and the whole weirdness that goes along over top of Scientology. They're very protective of all of that. But it's just, I don't know. This seems weird to me, Avram. It seems like a weird place for them to get involved.
Well, I read this story earlier this week, and I mean, I'm not going to pretend to understand the Church of Scientology, and I'm not going to, you know, give an opinion on. I mean, they are a religion, and so I'm not going to give my opinion on their religion. Uh, that's. But the I think this poses an interesting legal question because I'm not sure of any other devices that might have kind of a religious implication, right?
Sure, very interesting. And even more interesting is that's not what they're asking for.
What they're asking for not to have to show how it works, right?
But they're asking for things that require special training or licensing. Not
Right.
not
Well,
religiously significant training, just like an EKG.
right, right. So that I believe is their kind of workaround
Uh-huh.
to solving the issue, right? Because when you deal with the law, you have to come up with a general to get to the specific, right? They can't
Sure.
just like I think most people, if given the choice, would say, "Oh, um,
Meter.
could we have a carve out for e-meters? Was it e-meters?
Yeah, e-meter.
Like, could we have a carve out for e-meters?" And and I think most people would say, "Oh, who cares? Sure, give them what they want because e-meters. How many people have an e-meter, and how many people want to repair them?
Right.
Like, so few, so few, right? It it's a vanishingly small amount of people that would want this,
Right.
but there's a concern. I think that this is something that is said to have certain properties that you know that kind of are a backbone of a religious belief that
Right.
some people have, and therefore, if you were to, I don't know, take it apart and know how it worked, then you might question the veracity
Yeah.
of the results, which is questioning the religion,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now, but they don't want to pose it per se as a religious device, and I'm not really sure what a religious, like, I can't name another device that would fit into this category,
Yeah.
uh, and that would in fact cause some kind of a controversy. Like, there's a lot of things that people take as sort of articles of faith
Sure.
that we don't necessarily, um, question, because you can't scientifically prove them. I
Sure.
mean, that's the definition of faith, right? I
Right.
mean, there's there's a lot of things that that people believe uh, in various religions, but you can't put a scientific finger on them to say like, oh yeah, this is definitely this is true. I've proven it with the test or with a you
The
know uh,
no
whatever. You just
Noah's Ark. We'll throw out
yeah,
something that covers the three major Western religions. Noah's Ark, right? Find it.
yeah,
Prove that it's it, right?
right. I mean, but people don't. It's okay, right? Like there's a lot of things like that where
Yeah,
uh, you know it's okay for people to believe this,
right.
but we do have scientific scrutiny that might say like, hey, this isn't really happening, or whatever, or we don't have scientific evidence of it, or
Hmm.
whatever. And but people still have sort of, I think, in civil society we have sort of a separation of church and state where, and I don't mean in the governmental
Right.
sense, right? Where there are people who will say, well, this is a scientific thing and this is an article of faith. And then there are some people for whom, like, hey, you've got to prove, they they don't they can't deal with this disjuncture, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of people, for example, who will say like, hey, the Earth is really only 5,000 years old, or something like that, even
Yeah.
though all of our scientific evidence says that it's 4 billion years old.
God put
So
dinosaur bones there to to test our faith. I got you.
right, and there's people who believe that, and I'm not. It's above my pay grade for our for our
Hundred
call
hundred
for our
percent.
show, just
100%.
to question what those folks are saying. But it's never come into something where that I know of where there was an actual piece of electronics
Mm-hmm.
that was an article of faith. Like
Yeah.
every other religious gadget I can think of is first of all not really electronic, and doesn't and taking it apart or whatever wouldn't take apart your faith or whatever,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
It's all secondary, tertiary stuff. Wherein this is a primary thing. It's a core part of practice. And
right.
and
So
understanding it from a scientific standpoint could cause uh,
and
questioning.
you know
Yeah.
the Scientology, and I think one of the things that happens in Scientology is that they will, isn't it correct that they will use this on people who are not Scientologists yet, and as kind of a way of, I don't know, trying to, um, proselytize,
Yes.
let's
They use
say,
them. They
them
use them
into
in mall kiosks.
the faith. So
Signs that say stress test. Yeah.
right, so which is obviously different than some of the other things that ways that we see some religions proselytize.
Sure.
But hey, to each their own. But I think there's some worry there that if they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, we've kind of demystified the e-meter, that will
Yeah.
harm the credibility of their um, the credibility of their effort.
Sure.
The the,
Sure.
the
And
problem is
ever since Leah Remini's show, they've had to they've really had to go into kind of offensive mode, I think, because she did a good job of screwing up credibility.
I think they've
With
been. I mean, I don't think that was the first thing like
oh
that. I mean, there's been a
no, but
lot.
I think that was the first time that there was something that was widely watched. It was on a basic cable channel. I think it was it was widely available.
Right, right. So
For those of us
anyway,
here, like, if if they opened the vents on their kitchen stoves, I could smell it. Like that's how close we are to HQ.
right,
So we know a lot about. Anytime somebody quotes information, it comes from our local newspaper. because they did the big investigation. The St. Pete Times did the rundown. So, we know a lot here, but I think outside of our area and outside of LA, it was a little less known before. And now I think they're having to. That's why you're seeing the TV commercials and the billboards and stuff like that. At least we are. I don't know. I
Right.
realize
So
it's special here.
yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing that around here, but anyway, yeah. So I think this is so, but they have to set a legal precedent, and they don't want to say. I
Yeah.
don't think they want to. I think they want it's Scientology, and there's science in the name, right? So they want. I think they want to maintain the sanctity, the concept that the e-meter
Sure.
is, does what it says, and so I think they're worried that if somebody, I mean, I don't know, to try to be sort of look at it charitable to their point of view. Let's say, you know, they're thinking somebody who doesn't know what the e meter know enough about the e meter might
Right.
look at it and say something like, "Oh, this is just whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
really do what it says," and then it's more bad publicity for them. So if so, what I don't know enough about anything to say whether that person would be right or
Right.
whatever. Who knows? So I think consequently they're trying to protect this sort of article of faith,
Sure.
and their way of doing it is to say, "Oh yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to um, we're going to make sure that anybody who has to use such device has been trained on it."
Hmm.
The problem is what you said is it that stretches out to anything,
Yeah.
right?
Because now,
And everything.
now Logitech says the quick start guide in the box with their mouse is special training, and therefore you can't open it. Right? Obviously, that's a comical extreme, but
Well,
you
but
know,
wait, don't you have the special training if you read the quick start guide?
right? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, they said if you had the special training, you could repair it, right?
True. True.
So if the quick start guide is the
You
special
could still get
training,
around it.
then I mean, that I guess it depends on who decides what the special training is,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So all of it, starts getting weird. From a Scientology standpoint, couldn't care less. Y'all do whatever you want with your devices. I know they're not supposed to make it outside of your walls. There are hundreds of them on eBay. Um, Whatever. Don't care. And I'm fully aware that it's those devices that they're trying to keep people from taking apart. But from that standpoint, don't care. I think the specific wording, is problematic as a whole, for the purpose of what the carve outs are supposed to allow. And hopefully, again, Scientology out of it. If Logitech was asking for the same thing, or, BD or Medline or whatever, if I would be just as problematic, I'd find it just as problematic. The wording is, I don't want to say amateurish, but it does seem way too broad, and would certainly cause a problem. And I don't think that the
I mean,
office is going to accept it. Is
I
my
yeah,
guess.
I hope they don't because I mean, it's like I don't care what happens with the e meters. I don't
Yeah.
think most people do. But to say that you had to impose another restriction on anybody who wants to exercise the right to repair is very problematic.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think,
And
I
I
don't think this
suspect
should go. It should fly.
And I suspect it's about to come headlong into conflict with California anyway, with their new law, that's in the works. I think it's going to come into direct conflict over there. I don't think it's gonna. I think that's going to override, make it more acceptable even than the carve out to the DMCA. Right to repair is about to get about as wild as age verification for adult content, and whether or not you have to have an external app store on your mobile device. Like, I think this right to repair is going to be right up there in intensity of fight from both sides of the argument. But I think right to repair is going to go in favor of consumers, and I think it's going to happen quickly. The EU's already behind it. California is clearly behind it. Even the U.S. Copyright Office has been pushing little carve outs for years. I think they have an uphill battle here, and likely one that is absolutely impossible for them to actually pull off. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to plughitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.